Hi, I'm Serenity Stewart, 33 years old, an elementary school teacher in Denver. I've always believed family comes first, even when things were tough. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one who shows up, who helps out, who says yes when everyone else says no. That was before I discovered what my family really thought of me. Standing in the marble lobby of the Grand Windsor Hotel in Denver, clutching the single-dollar bill they handed me during Grandpa's will reading, I felt something inside me finally break. They gave Ashley $6.9 million, but me? $1. Then Grandpa's letter changed everything and made Mom scream. What I did next turned the tables forever. I need to back up a bit to explain how we got here. In our family, I was always the responsible one, the one who did everything right. I got good grades, went to college on scholarships, became a teacher, and built a modest life in Denver. My sister Ashley, 4 years younger, was different. She dropped out of college to become an influencer, as she calls it, with her perfect smile and carefully curated lifestyle. She amassed hundreds of thousands of followers across platforms. Our parents, Linda and Robert Stewart, never hid their preference. When Ashley needed money for a designer bag to maintain her image, they'd transfer funds immediately. When I needed help with medical bills after breaking my ankle 2 years ago, Dad said, "You should have better insurance. Serenity, we're not an ATM." It wasn't always this way. When we were little, before Ashley's social media fame, things felt more balanced. Mom would braid my hair and tell me I was her little star. Dad taught me to fish at our cabin in Colorado Springs, but as Ashley grew older and prettier, and eventually more famous online, their attention shifted. By the time I was in college, I was an afterthought. The pattern became clearer over time. On March 15th, 2021, Ashley called me crying about her wedding to Chad, a high-powered investment banker with family connections and a trust fund. "Sir, the venue needs another deposit," she sobbed into the phone. "Mom and Dad already paid so much, and I can't ask them again." I had been saving for a down payment on a condo. Still, I transferred $15,000 to her account that day. "You're the best sister ever," she gushed. "I'll pay you back as soon as the wedding gifts come in." Those wedding gifts came and went. So did the honeymoon to Bali, the housewarming party for their new 5-bedroom home in Cherry Creek, and the investment opportunity Chad couldn't miss. My texts about repayment went from being met with soon to being left on read. During the family 4th of July barbecue in 2022, I finally worked up the courage to mention it to Mom while we were alone in the kitchen. "Ashley's building her brand," Mom said, slicing tomatoes with precise, angry movements. "She needs to maintain appearances. You wouldn't understand. You've always been practical." She looked at my simple sundress and sensible shoes with thinly veiled disapproval. "You'll never be as successful as Ashley. Just accept your place." Her words were casual, as if she were discussing the weather instead of shattering my heart. I stood there, spatula in hand, unable to form words. At Thanksgiving later that year, my father made a toast to Ashley's million-follower milestone, while I sat quietly, having just received a Teacher of the Year nomination that no one had acknowledged. After dinner, when Ashley was showing everyone her latest sponsored products, I pulled Dad aside. "I feel like nothing I do matters to this family," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked annoyed. "Stop being so sensitive. We're just joking. Not everything is about you. Serenity." But the final straw came on January 28th, 2023. We gathered at the Rosewood Country Club in Connecticut for Great Aunt Judith's 90th birthday. The entire extended family was there, including Cousin Emma, who I'd always been close with despite our geographical distance. During lunch, Ashley announced that she was using Grandma's inheritance to launch her own beauty line. I froze, fork midway to my mouth. "What inheritance?" The table went quiet. Mom cleared her throat. "The $25,000 your grandmother left before she passed." "But Grandma told me she was leaving that to me, for my condo down payment." I looked around the table, confused. She knew how hard I've been saving. Ashley rolled her eyes. "You must have misunderstood. Besides, I'm putting it to much better use. My beauty line will be worth millions. Uncle Thomas, who was executor of Grandma's estate, looked uncomfortable. Serenity, I gave the check to your mother to distribute as instructed in the will. All eyes turned to Mom, who took a long sip of her wine. We discussed it as a family and decided Ashley's venture was a better investment. We? I asked. Who's we? Because I wasn't part of any discussion. Dad cleared his throat. Serenity, this isn't the time or place. When is the time or place? My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. When you're taking my inheritance without even telling me? Ashley's husband, Chad, spoke up. Look, Serenity, Ashley will make that $25,000 multiply. When she succeeds, the whole family benefits. How exactly do I benefit from her beauty line? I asked. Family prestige, Mom said firmly. Besides, you're doing fine. You have a stable job, a small apartment. Ashley needs this to get to the next level. Cousin Emma tried to interject, but Aunt Judith announced it was time for cake, effectively ending the conversation. I made it through the rest of the party on autopilot, smiling when appropriate, helping Aunt Judith open gifts, and cleaning up wrapping paper. No one mentioned the inheritance again. That evening, I sat alone in my 2015 Honda Civic in the country club parking lot, hands shaking on the steering wheel. I tried calling Mom. That money was Grandma's wish for me, I said when she answered. She told me specifically it was to help with my condo. Serenity, your grandmother would have wanted what's best for the family, Mom replied coldly. Ashley's business will benefit everyone. Your condo only benefits you. She hung up before I could respond. That night, driving back to my hotel, I vowed I would stop being the family doormat, but I didn't yet know how. What my family didn't know, what I had carefully kept from them for years, was that I wasn't just a school teacher. 5 years ago, I started making handcrafted home goods as a stress reliever after long days in the classroom. I opened an Etsy shop called Cozy Crafts, selling my hand-poured candles and custom embroidery. The shop took off unexpectedly, within a year. I'd moved from Etsy to my own website by year 2. I hired help by year 3. I had a small warehouse space and a team of 5 artisans working with me. I incorporated as Cozy Crafts LLC, and our products were being featured in subscription boxes and boutiques nationwide. I kept it quiet for several reasons. First, I genuinely loved teaching and didn't want to give it up. Second, I knew what would happen if my family found out I had money. The requests would start, then demands, then guilt when I refused. So I lived modestly, reinvested most profits, and told no one except my close friend Julia and my accountant. What began as a side hustle was now worth $2.3 million in assets. I was also a silent partner in 3 popular Denver restaurants: the Blue Oak Bistro, Tuscany Gardens, and Silverstone Bar. A chance meeting with a struggling chef at a farmer's market had led to our business relationship, and all 3 establishments were now thriving. Additionally, I held a patent on a specialized crafting tool I'd developed for my candle-making process. The royalties provided a steady stream of passive income that I funneled into investments. All of this, I kept hidden, living in my modest apartment, driving my Honda, and wearing clearance rack clothes when visiting family. I maintained 2 separate phones, 2 separate bank accounts, and essentially 2 separate lives. After the country club incident, I began documenting everything. I saved screenshots of family text conversations. I gathered bank records showing the $15,000 transfer to Ashley. I recovered emails from my grandmother to me discussing the inheritance. I even recorded phone conversations with my parents, Colorado being a one-party consent state. In March, I consulted with Morrison & Associates, a law firm specializing in family law and inheritance disputes. The lawyer, Margaret Collins, listened attentively as I laid out years of financial and emotional manipulation. "You have a solid case for the inheritance," she said. "As for the loan to your sister, that's trickier without written documentation, but still possible with the right approach." I decided to wait for the perfect moment to confront my family. That opportunity presented itself when Ashley and Chad announced they were throwing an engagement party for Chad's brother at the Crystal Ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel in Chicago on May 14th. It would be a lavish affair with the entire extended family present. In the meantime, my grandfather, my father's father, passed away in early April. The will reading was scheduled for May 1st at the Grand Windsor Hotel in Denver. Grandpa Harold had been a successful business owner who sold his company for a substantial sum before retiring. We all knew there would be significant assets to distribute. I flew in from a business conference in Seattle, another aspect of my life my family knew nothing about, and arrived at the hotel just as the family was gathering in a private conference room. Ashley was there with Chad, both dressed impeccably. My parents sat near the front, solemn but expectant. Various aunts, uncles, and cousins filled the remaining seats. The family attorney, Mr. Grayson, cleared his throat as I slipped into a chair in the back row. Harold Stewart was very specific about the distribution of his estate. He began, "I'll read directly from his will." What followed was a series of bequests to various family members, artwork to Aunt Linda, the vacation home to Uncle James, significant cash amounts to several cousins. Then came the main event. To my granddaughter, Ashley Stewart Hamilton, I leave the sum of $6,900,000. Ashley gasped, clutching Chad's arm. My parents beamed with pride. To my granddaughter, Serenity Stewart, Mr. Grayson continued, I leave the sum of $1. A hush fell over the room. Every head turned toward me. I sat perfectly still, my face a careful mask. Additionally, Mr. Grayson added, Harold left sealed letters for specific family members, to be opened only after the will reading. He distributed several envelopes. My mother received one, as did Ashley and I. With trembling fingers, I opened mine, expecting perhaps an explanation or an apology for the insulting bequest. Instead, I found a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. Serenity, my dear granddaughter. By now you know I've left you $1 in my will, while giving Ashley a substantial sum. You're wondering why I would do this, especially when we always had a special bond. The answer lies in the other letter I've left, the one your mother is reading now. Watch her face carefully. You are the true success of this family, though they fail to see it. I've been watching your business grow these past years with immense pride. Yes, I know all about Cozy Crafts, the restaurants, and the patent. I have friends in Denver who keep me informed. The $1 is symbolic. You don't need my money. You've built something remarkable on your own, without family connections or handouts. Ashley has neither the character nor the capability to do what you've done. Check your email. You'll find documentation transferring ownership of Stewart Enterprises Holdings to you. Effective upon my death, the company I supposedly sold years ago, I merely restructured it. It's worth approximately $28 million and has been quietly generating revenue this entire time. The family believes this company was liquidated and the proceeds spent during my retirement. Let them continue to believe that for now. You are my true heir in spirit and capability. Make of this what you will. With love and confidence, Grandpa Harold. I looked up just in time to see my mother's face transform from satisfaction to horror. She had gone pale, her hands shaking as she held her own letter. Then she screamed, a raw, angry sound that cut through the quiet murmurs of the room. This is a mistake, she said, looking frantically at Mr. Grayson. There must be some mistake. What is it, Mom? Ashley asked, alarmed. But Mom was staring at me with new eyes, calculating, reassessing. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. All documents have been verified and are legally binding. This concludes the official reading of the will. As people began to disperse, my mother rushed over to me, my father close behind. Serenity, we need to talk, she hissed, grabbing my arm. I gently removed her hand. I have a flight to catch, I said calmly. We can talk at Ashley's party next weekend. But next weekend, I repeated firmly, walking away with the $1 bill and my grandfather's letter tucked safely in my purse. Once in my rental car, I immediately checked my email. There it was. Documentation for Stewart Enterprises Holdings, with my name listed as the sole owner. The company owned commercial real estate across 3 states, had investments in emerging technology firms, and held patents that generated substantial licensing fees. I was now worth over $30 million. I contacted Ms. Collins immediately and set the next phase of my plan in motion. The week passed in a blur of legal meetings, conference calls, and preparations. My parents called repeatedly, but I sent their calls to voicemail. Ashley texted, suddenly interested in catching up with her big sis. I responded with non-committal pleasantries. On May 14th, I arrived at the Crystal Ballroom in Chicago wearing a custom-designed dress by a renowned designer whose work Ashley had always coveted, but could never quite afford. My hair and makeup were professionally done, and I wore a delicate necklace featuring a single diamond that had belonged to my grandmother, a piece she had given me in private years ago. The ballroom was spectacular, with crystal chandeliers, elaborate floral arrangements, and about 150 guests mingling over champagne. I spotted my parents immediately, huddled in intense conversation with Ashley and Chad. They hadn't noticed me yet. I approached the stage where a small orchestra was playing and whispered to the event coordinator, who nodded after checking my identification. The music stopped, and the coordinator tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special presentation before dinner. Please take your seats." Curious murmurs filled the room as guests found their assigned tables. My parents and Ashley looked confused. This wasn't on the program. I walked onto the stage as a screen descended behind me. The room quieted. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "For those who don't know me, I'm Serenity Stewart, Ashley's sister." My family's table was front and center. My mother's expression was a mixture of confusion and apprehension. "Family has always been important to me," I continued. "So important that I've tolerated years of inequality, manipulation, and outright theft." Gasps rippled through the audience. My father half stood, but my mother pulled him back down. "Let me share some examples." I clicked a remote, and the screen behind me displayed a bank transfer receipt. $15,000 transferred from my account to Ashley's on March 15th, 2021, for wedding expenses, never repaid despite multiple promises. Another click showed a series of text messages. Ashley: "I'll pay you back after honeymoon, I promise." Me: "It's been 3 months. Ash, I need that money for my condo down payment." Ashley: "Stop being so selfish. We just bought new furniture. We'll pay soon, Kay?" I continued through the evidence methodically. The diverted inheritance, recorded conversations where my parents dismissed my achievements while praising Ashley's Instagram followers, emails from my grandmother explicitly stating her wishes for her inheritance to go toward my condo. But perhaps most interesting is what happened at Grandpa Harold's will reading last week, I said, my voice now strong and clear. I read aloud from Grandpa's letter, watching my mother's face contort with each word. When I reached the part about Stewart Enterprises Holdings, Ashley gasped audibly. "That company is worth approximately $28 million, I announced. "And now, it belongs to me." The ballroom erupted in whispers. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Ashley was frantically whispering to Chad, who looked increasingly concerned. "Additionally," I continued, "I'd like to introduce myself properly. I'm Serenity Stewart, founder and CEO of Cozy Crafts LLC, a company currently valued at $2.3 million. I'm also a silent partner in 3 Denver restaurants and hold a patent that generates substantial royalties." I clicked to show business documentation, profit statements, and press coverage my company had received. In short, while you were all dismissing me as just a teacher, I was building a multi-million-dollar business. A business I kept secret because I knew what would happen if certain family members discovered I had money. My mother stood up, her voice shrill. "This is inappropriate. This is Chad's brother's engagement party." "Actually," I replied calmly, "I spoke with Melissa and Trevor this morning." I gestured to Chad's brother and his fiancée, who were watching with fascination. They were quite interested in hearing why their future in-laws treated one daughter so differently from another. They gave me their blessing for this presentation. I turned back to the screen. Now, let's discuss legal matters. I filed a lawsuit to recover the $25,000 inheritance that was illegally diverted, plus the $15,000 loan, with interest. Additionally, I'm seeking $500,000 in damages for emotional distress and financial manipulation. My father finally found his voice. You ungrateful. Robert, my mother cut him off, aware of the watching crowd. I'm not done, I said. Grandpa Harold left me a letter with his will because he knew exactly what kind of people you are. He'd been watching me build my business for years, something none of you bothered to notice or inquire about. I clicked to show another document, the email Grandpa had referenced. This transfer of Stewart Enterprises holdings happened automatically upon his death. His personal attorney handled everything, bypassing Mr. Grayson and the family entirely. I fixed my gaze directly on my mother. He knew you would try to interfere if you discovered his plans. The letter you received at the will reading, the one that made you scream, what did it say, Mom? My mother remained silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Should I tell everyone? Or would you prefer to explain why you've been lying about Grandpa's finances for years? The color drained from my mother's face. From the side of the room, Cousin Emma stood up. I'd like to say something. All eyes turned to her. I've watched how this family has treated Serenity for years, she said firmly. The way you dismissed her achievements, took advantage of her generosity, and manipulated her emotionally. It was wrong, and I regret not speaking up sooner. Aunt Margaret, my father's sister, rose next. I always wondered why Harold was so secretive about his finances in his later years. Now I understand. He was protecting his legacy from being squandered. The momentum was shifting. Chad's parents were watching with undisguised horror. Other relatives were whispering, connecting dots from years of family gatherings where the disparity in how Ashley and I were treated had been on display. Serenity, my father said, his voice quieter now. Let's discuss this privately, as a family. We are discussing it as a family, I replied. The entire family deserves to know the truth. Ashley suddenly stood, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. This is all lies. She's jealous because Grandpa loved me more. She's trying to ruin my life because her life is so pathetic. Chad tugged at her arm, trying to get her to sit down. The outburst was making everything worse. I remained calm. I have documentation for everything I've presented tonight. My lawyer has copies of all of it. This isn't about jealousy, Ashley. It's about accountability. I turned back to the audience. I apologize for disrupting the celebration. I wish Melissa and Trevor every happiness. I nodded to the engaged couple, who nodded back with stunned expressions. For anyone interested in the complete story, I've prepared folders with copies of all documentation, available at the exit. I believe in transparency. I stepped away from the microphone as the room erupted in conversation. As I walked past my family's table, my mother grabbed my wrist. You've ruined everything, she hissed. I looked at her calmly. No, Mom. You did that yourselves. Years ago. I gently removed her hand and continued walking. Cousin Emma fell into step beside me, squeezing my arm in silent support. At the doorway, I turned back for one final look. My parents were arguing in hushed, furious whispers. Ashley was sobbing dramatically while Chad looked increasingly uncomfortable. Other family members were approaching them with questions, accusation in their postures. Outside, the May evening was warm and fragrant with spring blossoms. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a notification from my pilot. The private jet I'd chartered was ready whenever I was. Yes, I'd chartered a private jet. After years of penny pinching to maintain my cover, I decided one extravagant gesture was warranted. The aftermath was swift and far-reaching. By the next morning, screenshots from my presentation had leaked online, likely through one of Ashley's cousins by marriage who never liked her much. Her carefully cultivated image as a self-made influencer began to crumble as followers learned about her financial dependence on our parents And now, her wealthy sister. She lost nearly 100,000 followers in a week as the story spread. Sponsorship deals were canceled. Her nascent beauty line, funded by my grandmother's diverted inheritance, found itself without investors as the lawsuit became public knowledge. My parents attempted damage control. First came the cease and desist letters claiming defamation, which my legal team dismantled efficiently. Then came tearful voicemails about family loyalty and working things out. Finally, threats about contesting Grandpa's will, which their lawyers surely told them was futile given the ironclad documentation. The most surprising development came 3 weeks after the Chicago confrontation. I received a call from my father. "Your mother and I are separating," he said without preamble. I said nothing, waiting. 35 years of marriage, he continued, his voice hollow. "Did you think about that before your little stunt?" "Did you think about my feelings before diverting Grandma's inheritance?" I countered. "Or dismissing every achievement I ever had? Or teaching Ashley that it was acceptable to take advantage of me?" A long silence followed. "We never meant," he began, then stopped. "We thought we were doing what was best." "Best for whom, Dad?" Another long pause. "I don't know anymore." It was the closest thing to introspection I'd ever heard from him. "I'm sorry, Serenity," he said finally. "Not for everything, but for enough that I should have said it sooner." It wasn't a complete apology, but it was something. A month later, my parents filed for divorce. The family wealth they'd hoarded and distributed so unevenly was now tied up in legal proceedings, with both of them claiming the other had mismanaged funds. Ashley's influencer career never recovered. The last I heard, she was working at Target and living in a one-bedroom apartment after Chad filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and financial misrepresentation. As for me, I finally moved out of my modest apartment into a beautiful home in Seattle, where I relocated Cozy Crafts LLC's headquarters. The company continued to thrive, and with Grandpa's holdings added to my portfolio, I had resources I'd never imagined. I established a scholarship fund for teachers pursuing advanced degrees. Named after my grandmother, I donated to causes supporting financial literacy and entrepreneurship for young women, and I built a new support network, a chosen family of friends and colleagues who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. 6 months after the confrontation, I attended a business conference in Vancouver. During a panel on ethical entrepreneurship, I shared parts of my story, not the family drama, but the journey of building a business from passion while maintaining my teaching career. Afterward, a man approached me, tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "That was inspiring," he said, extending his hand. "I'm James Mitchell. I run an educational nonprofit that partners with businesses to teach entrepreneurship in public schools." We talked for hours that evening about business, education, and the intersection of the two. He never once mentioned my net worth or asked for funding. Instead, he asked about my teaching experiences, my crafting process, what books I'd read recently. When I finally checked the time, it was past midnight. "I'd like to continue this conversation," he said simply, "if you're interested." 6 months later, James and I were still dating, splitting our time between Seattle and his home base in Portland. He understood my caution about relationships after my family experience and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. On a crisp fall evening, as we walked along Seattle's waterfront, he asked the question I'd been anticipating. "Have you spoken to your family since everything happened?" I watched a ferry cross the Sound before answering. "Emma calls regularly. She's the only one I consider family now." "And your parents, Ashley?" Ashley sent a Christmas card with no return address, just signed "Your Sister," without even her name. My mother emails occasionally, superficial things about the weather or asking if I received some article she sent. My father, nothing since he told me about the divorce. James nodded, not pushing further. "Do you think you'll ever reconcile?" he asked after a while. I considered the question carefully. Not in the way they want, returning to how things were, pretending nothing happened, but maybe someday we can build something new, something honest. That sounds healthy, James said, squeezing my hand. What about you? Would you want to meet them if they came around? He turned to face me, his expression serious. I want whatever gives you peace, serenity. These are your boundaries to set. I'm just here to support you. In that moment, I realized how far I'd come from the woman who transferred $15,000 without question, who silently accepted being told to know her place, who drove home alone with shaking hands after having her inheritance stolen. I had found my voice, my power, and now, someone who respected both. The journey wasn't over. There would be legal proceedings, potential family reconciliations, or permanent estrangements, business challenges, and personal growth ahead. But for the first time in my life, I was moving forward on my own terms, with confidence in my worth that no one could diminish. Standing there on the waterfront with James, I thought about Grandpa Harold and his final gift to me, not the money or the company, but the push I needed to stand up for myself, to demand respect, to stop accepting scraps from a table where I'd earned a seat. Ready to head back? James asked, noticing the evening chill. I took one last look at the water, at the lights reflecting on its surface, at the vast possibility of the horizon beyond. Yes, I said, smiling. I'm ready.